Hi all, welcome to another video. This is long overdue on the what I'd call small form factor desktop build, and it's based on the AMD 5350 CPU, and for benchmarking we're going to be using that CPU's own internal graphics. So what I did in the BIOS is I set the amount of RAM to be applied to those graphics, set those to 2 gig maximum. Also in the BIOS there's a slight overclock I did to the CPU, which is easy to select, and it's running at 2100 megahertz. It's not much from stock, but it's better than nothing. And it's using 8 gig of DDR3 1600 megahertz RAM. That's 2 sticks of 4 gig. And in the AMD Radeon software settings I selected the gaming preset rather than quality. So just to quickly run through a few of the 3D Mark Legacy benchmark scores. For 3D Mark 2003 we've got a score of 6869. For 2005 we've got a score of 6334. For 2006 we've got a score of 3698. 3D Mark Vantage 1848. 3D Mark 11 593. Now to be honest, it wasn't worth running those last two because the system just virtually ground to a halt almost. Same with Heaven and Valley. They will run, but the scores will be so low it's not really worth running. And in all those benchmarks I just took the default settings. So what I'm going to do now is start a few games and just see how this system performs. Now Fortnite, it will start, but there's just too many graphical glitches, and to be honest it's not that great performance anyway, which is what probably expected on that game. So I'm not going to include that. Okay, so let's start up a few games. So first up we have CSGO, Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Now I've got all the settings onto the minimum, including the resolution, and at the moment no firefight, we're getting low 20s. I mean it plays alright, even though that frame rate doesn't sound too good. So I suppose if you can accept low 20s on this game, then it's going to be fine for you. I mean sometimes looking at the counter now it's even on high 20s, which is pretty good I suppose. Right, so that's CSGO, Counter-Strike Global Offensive. On to the ever reliable Crysis benchmark. Now as a side note, I've got the graphical performance metrics showing in the top right hand corner, and that's from AMD Radeon's own inbuilt software tool setting, so it's quite useful that. And I've got all the graphical quality settings set to low. I mean the Crysis engine is so good that even on everything set to low it still looks decent, and it's got the second lowest resolution. With not too much going on, we like getting mid-20s, which is acceptable. I'll just try and get a few characters moving on the screen, and it even gets to high 20s and nudging past low 30s, which is quite good. So will it play Crysis? Yes it will. This is FIFA 2014, and at the moment we're getting a pretty decent 60 frames per second. So this might even play 1 or 2 games after this. But if you want a decent football experience at 60 frames per second, then FIFA 2014 is where to go. This is Need for Speed Most Wanted, and at the moment we're getting low 20s. I mean it looks alright, but I'm sure once a few cars get on the screen that frame rate's going to go down quite a lot. So maybe try the games in this series prior to this, and there are quite a few. But if you can live with that low frame rate and you want to have a go at this game, then go for it, because I've got all the graphical effects set to low and the lowest resolution, which doesn't really help much. Okay, so that's Need for Speed Most Wanted. Up next is Paladins. Now I've got all the graphical quality settings set to low, and I've put the resolution down by 2 or 3 notches, and the resolution scales down a bit to 90, and at the moment we're getting mid to high 30s with a lot of characters on the screen, which is just fine. And the game still looks good as well. So this machine will quite happily play Paladins. Okay, so on to Realm Royale. Now, similar settings to Paladins, as I think this is probably using the same game engine, and we're getting actually similar frame rates, low 30s, sometimes mid 30s, which on this game is just fine. There's no other characters on the screen at the moment, so I'm sure that that rate might go down a touch, but as it stands, looks and plays alright to me. Right, so that's Realm Royale. Here we go with Rocket League. Now I've got all the settings on what this game's calls performance, which is what it says. It puts performance before quality. And it looks okay on this monitor to me, and it's playing okay, and the resolution is not on the maximum, but the frames per second counter is low to mid 20s. Sometimes it nudges even towards 30. I mean, it's playable, and it looks okay to me on this size monitor. So it's really up to you if you want to try it, but seems to be playing okay at the moment. Right, so that's Rocket League. And this is Team Fortress 2. Now, it's one of those games that's not quite taxing on the system, but nevertheless I've put the quality settings onto low, and I've actually kept the resolution onto the maximum, so it's just a matter of trying to find the right balance at the moment with a lot going on. I mean, it's low 20s, so I suppose get that resolution down a bit and just see if you can get more frames per second. I mean, sometimes it gets to mid 20s. I mean, it looks okay, and it seems to be playing fine to my eyes. Okay, so that is Team Fortress 2. And this is Zula, and I've got the quality set to minimum, and I think almost the lowest resolution. And once again, on this size monitor, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, we're getting mid 40s actually, so it does give you a bit of headroom to up that quality a touch if you wanted a better gaming experience. I think out of all these freebie online games, Zula is the one that's the least taxing on the system, so you can be sure on a machine like this it's going to be a decent enough gaming experience. Right, so that's Zula. Now you can be sure this machine will play the first Far Cry, but this is Far Cry 2. Now I've got the majority of graphical quality settings set to medium and 1 or 2 set to low, and it's not on the lowest resolution. At the moment we're getting mid to high 20s, which with this mini firefight going on is very acceptable. If you want more frames, then just adjust those settings accordingly. Right, so that's Far Cry 2. Just to sum up then, this small form factor system is based on the AMD Athlon 5350, which is socket AM1. It's the highest rated CPU in that series, and what I did is I applied a small overclock in the BIOS and gave the integrated graphics on that chip 2 gig of RAM. This system's got 8 gig of DDR3 1600 megahertz RAM, solid state drive and a hard drive. Now that hard drive is from a laptop, so it's not the quickest, it's 5400 RPM, and I think you'd be better off if you can get one to fit in there. It's one rated at 7200 RPM. Now this game will play a lot of the free online games, but there were graphical glitches when I started up Fortnite and Valorant, so those two games weren't playable. Now some of them weren't the highest rated frames per second in gameplay, but on this size monitor and on the lowest quality settings, you can still have a decent game or two. And also I loaded up a couple of really old but good games, Crysis and Far Cry 2, which this system coped pretty well. So if there's any games you want me to try out on this system, drop a comment, leave a like or dislike, and don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.